Hello and welcome to the FBL. Bleh, FBL? What the fuck is FBL? Should I leave that in?
Fancy Bundesliga.
Fantasy Bundesliga podcast. Okay. Hello and welcome to the FPL Double Up podcast. This is a very special episode. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Wes, aka FPL Heisenberg, and this week we have the pleasure of being joined by Mark Sutherns. Mark's the founder of Fantasy Football Scout, and he is a current member of FPL Black Box with Az, who I thought was AZ, and we thought it was quite funny. Sounds pretty gangster. And he's also setting up Fantasy Football Fest. So, and you've also got a pretty impressive rank so far this season, Mark. How you going?
It's not doing bad. I'm quite happy. Yeah, it was because we started Black Box, me and AZ. You'll love that, by the way. And I was kind of nervous because when you start a new venture, whether you're doing a new pod or you're on a new show, and you think, well, I've got to do well because I'm putting myself forward here. And yeah, I'm really pleased. At the start of the season, we were like, oh, right, we want to set definite goals because that's part of the Black Box theory. And I got all Billy Big Potatoes and went, well, I want to come in the top 1K. And I was like, yeah. But I'm on track. I could do it. I'll be absolutely delighted if I make that. So that's the target.
So you I had a little look earlier today. You're about 2.2k. So you're failing miserably, I'd say, for that target.
At the moment, yeah. I'm not beating myself up about it, Wes, but yeah.
But yeah, so...
You need to go hunting differentials. You'll be captain on John Stones this week. He's probably not even playing. He's got a red card.
Still suspended.
Yeah. I'll be trying to do anything to get into top 1K in the last few game weeks. So yeah, look out for the bizarre choices then.
I'm sure you'll get that. How many? So I was having a little look earlier, Mark, and I've got to say again, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but your FPL record is unbelievable. Like I'm pretty happy with my own record. What I've got, I've done okay, but looking at yours is something else. Me and John were messaging each other earlier about it, just absolutely cracking up at how brilliant it is. I think it's 9 top 10Ks and 4 in the top 400. Is that right?
Yeah, if I'm trying to get that 5th one, that'd be nice. I'm not sure I'll get it this year, but yeah, and I've had a couple of bad seasons though. That there's a couple of blots on the copybook, so to speak. But I think that sums me up really. I'm quite extreme. I'll either have very good seasons or some pretty awful ones where I just can't recover it. And I've got a certain way of playing, I guess, that leads to that kind of result. There are guys who get consistently in the top 5K every year. I don't think I'll ever be that because I will have bad seasons. But at the same time, I will be able to push up into the top 100 perhaps a couple more times before I stop playing, whenever that will be.
What do you do that makes that happen? Like when you say that's the way you play, what makes that boom or bust happen? I know me and Wes, and there's people who listen to this podcast will know, we're relatively risk adverse. We kind of do just play the easy choices. Don't be a hero. Play the odds game essentially. And I feel like that's maybe why Wes does have the top 30k finishes so consistently. I've only really started buying into this, and maybe last season I was about 50k. This season peaked at 7k, and now I'm at 38. I'm having a meltdown, but that's for later. But it's kind of consistent choices. But I don't know if playing the way I play going forward, I would ever have a 42 placed finish or 115th. What is it you do?
Yeah, it's hard to define. Part of what we do with Black Box is trying to discover that and kind of pay attention to what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I've kind of got a bit more insight this year than I have in previous years. And I think as we continue to do Black Box, I hope to build up a picture of how I play and what my methods are and what works and what doesn't. I guess for me, it's a balance between using data and using that alongside the eye test. I don't think you can rely on one or the other. I use statistical models as well. So I kind of, I sanity check everything against models, but I use data and the eye test and a balance between the two. And I guess it's just over the years, you kind of get experience for watching players and knowing the profile of players and spotting when you feel that they're confident and knowing what data to look at to try and confirm that. And it minimizes the mistakes and it minimizes how many times you have to be lucky. I also think that playing aggressively in the opening period of the season is something that I stick to. And I think that gives me a certain amount of freedom later in the season because I've got...
Is that to build team value?
Yeah, I am a believer in that. I know there's a movement out there, quite a big movement, to say, well, you wait until the last minute to get all the data in. I deliberately try and set up my team so I don't have to do that. I see it as an advantage. If I can get on players early and catch price rises early, then over time that will give me some advantage. It might not be massive, but it's some, right?
Yeah.
It's marginal gains, right? Everything is about marginal gains. If getting a player for 0.1 cheaper than the next man gets me a 0.01% advantage on them, I'll take that because I might do that 10 times and suddenly that's 1%,
Exactly.
right?
So in every previous season, I've done exactly the same. The first half of the season, I have been aggressive and gone early. If I've known what move I want to do and I'm fully set on it, and price rate changes are going to happen. However, this season I've tweaked it because of COVID in that first half of the season was so rampant and so risky. I basically changed to, I think this season I've only made early moves 2 or 3 times when I would have been priced out, whereas before I've been very much, it would annoy me if I missed a price change. I was very eager on checking the price change, but I just changed this year, so it is tough. I do really like that style of play from you, and I wish I'd done it this year. I'm ranked around 7k at the minute, so I'm fairly happy, but no, I think I am still happy just for this season because of COVID. Next season, if it gets back to some sort of normality, I think I'll revert back to that style that you were just sort of outlining there.
Yeah, and it's not careless. You've got to set your team up. You've got to have a bench. If you've got a bench that's fairly decent, if you've got a first or even a second sub that you know that, okay, if they come on, I don't mind that, you can make the early transfer. And if an injury occurs in Europe in midweek, you can absorb it, right? I'm not saying I'd do it if I only had 11 men and my first sub was, Brewster, then I wouldn't do it, I just wouldn't do it. So, but the key is set your team up so you haven't got that, and then you've got the freedom to go early if you really want to. So that's what I try and do, and I'm a believer in that. I guess it's just experience. It's just knowing the signs when to get on a player, and when a bandwagon is genuine. And sometimes you get it wrong, but over the years, I guess I've got it right more times than wrong.
Yeah. And it's like, just to put that into context for people. So, have you had Lingard were you an early adopter of Lingard and Iheanacho in more recent weeks?
Fairly early. I got Iheanacho 3 weeks ago. I got Lingard for the one where he missed a penalty and converted it. That's the week I got him. That's the week I got him. I mean, I was covered. And the thing is, I think people who got Lingard around that time still saw it as a bit of there was a lot of people laughing about it. Oh, I'm going to get Jesse Lingard. And actually, I was in the other camp. I always thought he was a good player to get. I didn't see it as a pick to kind of laugh at and make fun of. I really did see him as someone who would do well. So I kind of think that, I don't know, he actually scored in every game for the next 5 game weeks for me, and people didn't expect it. But I saw it the minute he put on a shirt for West Ham. He just looked a different player, didn't he?
Yeah, same. And for anyone else out there just thinking I'm just agreeing with Mark there, I did tweet about it, so I'm going to dig that out.
Yeah.
I'm going to retweet myself later on tonight, actually.
This is a kind of completely side topic, as we do. I was watching Match of the Day the other night, and I was watching the Chelsea game, and I seen Timo Werner get a goal, and I felt quite happy in my belly. He did score, didn't he? He did score.
Yep.
He did.
I remember feeling like, oh, Jesus, it's great, because he seems like a lovely guy. And it was when you mentioned bandwagons and then you mentioned Jesse Lingard, this is almost the perfect case. Early in the season, I got Werner because he was in the bandwagon for week 1, and I just felt wrong about it the whole time. And then recently, he trolled me all season, and I was watching the other night, and he scored the goal, and then he missed I wouldn't call it a sitter, but it was a decent chance. Yeah. Decent chance. And I was kind of thinking, like, learnings from this season in FPL. I was thinking, next season now, FPL, now, calling him a Lingard is maybe a bit harsh, but would I bring the biases from this season into next season if Chelsea had good fixtures, he had a great pre-season or a great opening few games? Would I be almost still scarred from that and be like, nah, I'm not getting fucking Timo Werner in? Do you know, it's almost that kind of like, even earlier in the season, now this is a stretch and I'm not saying this is the same, but even when Benteke had a couple of assists over 3 games and he had a bit of a goal threat and whatever, now I know this is different, it's Crystal Palace and it's Benteke, but I would put Benteke in that Lingard sort of thing. It's like, I'm not getting bloody Benteke, are you joking? When at times you kind of need to put that to the side, and I think Lingard, in his first couple of weeks of form, everyone put him in that basket.
Sometimes that bias can be, sorry Mark, just before you jump in, I'll just say sometimes that bias can be helpful and it can actually steer you away from those traps that do exist. However, I think we said it on last week's pod, John, or a couple of weeks ago, you have to adapt to the situation. Like 2 months ago, someone said to me Lingard and Iheanacho would be saving your game week, like they did for me, like either last week or the week before in that game where they played each other. I'd have said you're crazy. I'd have said Iheanacho's not nailed on. I'd have said Lingard's hasn't got an assist or goal in however many years. But you have to obviously watch football, and like Mark said earlier, watching the football, looking at the data, seeing all those things add up, and you see when you're watching the football, you see the confidence in both Lingard and Iheanacho, and that's why they're producing the goods as well. That's a big factor, confidence in football. So yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that before we hear from Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it is with those two players as well, because they score. They need the confidence to score those goals, right? They score.
100%.
They don't score. I mean, Nacho has had tap-ins, but he actually does score goals from 20 yards from outside the box, and so does Lingard. Certainly does, right? So that's how their output has been so great, because they're scoring goals that you need confidence to even attempt those shots. And so if you haven't got that confidence, you ain't going to take that shot on. And you saw it last night with Inacho. That shot on the turn, that instant early shot into the roof of the net, he wouldn't have done that 6 months ago. He wouldn't have had the confidence to turn inside. He'd have turned inside and looked for support and laid it off like he did for Castagno, I guess. But at the moment, he is just on top of his game, and he's going, well, everything I hit's going to be on target, and you've got to save it to stop me scoring. And Lingard is, for United, he had some matches where he showed that. He showed that he could score. I remember having him one week, and he scored a brilliant 25-yard curler for United against Everton, and I'd got him as a differential, and he delivered for me, and I always remembered that. And so when I got him when he went to West Ham, I had that memory back in the day. So that was a bias that actually helped me, because I remembered what he's got in his locker when he's on top of his game, and that's it. It's like, look at Gundogan this year. Gundogan will go back maybe to a deeper role next season, but the minute he's suggesting he's going to be getting in the box again, we'll remember this year and go, right, we're getting on him early because we know what he's capable of. So it's about that experience. It's building that knowledge of players that, we used to say, look, when Aguero's not fit, get Jesus, for example. It's maybe not appropriate now, but, it's those ideas that you build in your head that you only get with time and experience as an FPL manager. And when certain things happen or when certain signs appear on the pitch, that's when you move. And it takes time, I guess, to build that knowledge up.
Absolutely. It's just about getting those reps in, isn't it? The more times you've been in certain situations, the more times you've played the game. I mean, people can't rock. You wouldn't rock up to any game in the world on your first season or for your first time playing it and expect to compete with the big boys. Like, people live and breathe this, and people have done for, God, Mark, you've probably been living and breathing this for 10, 15 years. I don't have a clue. I'm just guessing. You can probably tell me it's more. I don't know if we've talked to people in the podcast who used to play in the paper version and
that's right,
all that sort of stuff, like madness. Mark, before we get into the sort of meat of this week's pod, in terms of, people are asking about Bruno, Jota, Vardy, there's captaincy, there's game weeks 35, 36, there's a bunch of questions. One last thing I want to throw at you and give you a chance to plug it, because I'm actually genuinely interested. I keep seeing it everywhere. Whatever ways they're marketing is working brilliant. A Fantasy Football Fest sounds like a dream to me. Talk to me.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at Scout, it was an idea that we kind of knocked about, because Chris, who runs Scout now and who was my partner in the business, he's got a company which do a lot of events. And I always said to him, look, when this scene gets bigger, we should do a live event, and a few hundred people. And we used to do Scout Camp, which was just a contributor to the site, and that was like 30, 40. And we always thought, let's open it up to the public and see what we get. And it never happened. We were always too busy. There was other things on. So when I left Scout, I was kind of thinking about it. And I know that Planet FBL did a few get-togethers in London and Manchester in pubs. And when I launched Black Box, I said to James at Planet FBL, I said, when you and Suj do the next ones, me and Az could come along with you, do a double header, see how many tickets we can sell. And he was like, yeah, I'm up for that. And then Ed posted about Fest, and I was like, hold on, this is the idea, but +1, basically. This is taking it on further. So I got in touch and said, I'm interested in getting on board. And Ed was looking for some people in the community who had, been around a bit and had maybe established in the community. So Jani got on board as well. And it's just gone from there. And the idea is really, out of lockdown, it's perfect. It's about obviously getting people together under one roof and just getting a load of passionate, like-minded people together talking FBL and talking fantasy football. It's not just FBL. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a launch party in the pre-season ahead of next season on the 13th of August. So we're close to naming a venue for that. And then the next big event will be at Christmas, and we'll just grow it year on year. And the idea being that we'll see where it goes. It's about getting people together, social thing, but also we're going to have content creators there doing live stuff. We want to do live podcasts, live streams. We want to get the Premier League involved, get a film crew down from them, get them interviewing people in the community, which I know they're going to like doing. And just generally do workshops and little round tables, little Q&As, and the kind of things that other industries do that I think the fantasy football industry is now ready for. It's big enough. There's enough of us now creating good stuff. Let's get together and share our knowledge and experience and have a good time while doing it.
I think you're 100% right, because there's conventions about all sorts of things. I'm big into collecting sports cards, and sort of sports car conventions are huge. If you look into sort of comics, if you look into Marvel, if you look into Dungeons and Dragons, if you look into all sorts of things. And I mean, there's 8 million or so, probably more, less. I don't know what the number is now. Next season, God knows what it'll be. FPL players on the planet. How many of them are in the UK? A lot. And, I think it's outstanding because I could see, I know, who am I think will go with me? I don't know. Brendy's got a lot of kids. Andy. Wes, I might have to go with you, mate. We might have to fly in for the Fantasy Football Fest. And
we want you there, absolutely. We want all, yeah.
We the top and tail, John.
We absolutely want the names there because it's just people. I mean, I'm thinking about we're not going to have enough time in the evening to have all the conversations we want to have. There'll be 100%. There's so many people I want to meet and say hello to and chat about, and we've known each other in the community. I think the FBL community, since I've come back into it via Twitter, I think it's brilliant. And people like you who are putting this content together, and there's so many people doing that kind of thing. I think it's great to share that and getting people together under one roof and just talking about the experience of what it's like to create content, irrespective of our teams and our seasons, just about that. It's going to be great. And hopefully the public will turn up, people in mini leagues will turn up with their crew, and it will just grow year on year. That's the vision.
There's a few beautiful... Sorry, Wes.
Sorry, John. I was just going to say that the good thing about this as well is that what I think will also help to make it a success is that you've got, 3 of the biggest websites in fantasy football behind it. You've got Scout, Hub, and Fix. Fantasy football, everyone listening knows those guys. 3 of the biggest, probably the biggest websites to do fantasy Premier League, FPL. So with that back in, with you guys and marketing, and the fact, like you say, the industry's ready for it. Hopefully the COVID situation allows for it to be what it can be, and it's gonna be really a lot of fun. But John, what was you gonna say? Sorry, bud.
I was just gonna say, I've met up with guys who I'd never met in my life before. I don't know if any of them listen to this podcast, but there was just this group on Twitter before, 50 lads, called the Girls of Ireland or whatever, and they were meeting up in Cork, which is where I am. One weekend, I was like, look, I'll go. And I'm an outgoing guy. I talk to different people on podcasts every week. I don't know if COVID's given me a bit of social anxiety or what, but and for anyone out there who's thinking oh geez, because a lot of us play this game but don't have anyone that close to us who can speak to. I think with events like this, the beautiful thing about it is you could actually go on your own. And it might sound weird, but you could actually go on your own and have a ball, and you'd be there, and everyone in that room you've something in common with, and you can have a laugh and you can have a talk and you can have a pint, and that's a beautiful thing. I
think it might even be better to go on your own. I think I'd probably rather go on my own rather than with a group.
Well, that's me snubbed. All right, okay then. Wes, for fuck's sake.
No,
straight out.
No, John, you would be you're a friend of mine from this community. I mean, my real life friends who are a bunch of idiots, really. So
I mean, it's funny because I've been at parties with my partner, and there's been fellas there. I didn't know anyone there. And it turns out that one of them plays FBL, and my missus says to his missus, that's it. That's the end of the night. You're not going to see them now. And we just went off in the corner and spoke FBL for about 3 or 4 hours. And when you've got that passion, shared, there's just so many stories you can tell about your season, previous season, players you've earned, players you sold, mistakes you've made, differentials you brought in.
Yeah.
And there's just so much. And that's just with one person. Sharing it with multiple people across the evening. You're absolutely right. You can go on your own and you'll leave with with friends that you can join, talk to in the community for forever until next year when you can meet up again. And that's the idea.
And the stories last for years, like you say, sorry, Mark. It's like John Walters, who, what was it that week? Did he miss a penalty and scored a goal, got a -4 or something? Yeah. And then so that's obviously in folklore and loads of other stuff like that. And then you can bring that up or certain stuff that's happened. So it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's good. And the launch party is our first. It's not really our first event proper. It's just a way of kicking things off, getting people together, making contacts, and then we'll build from there. We plan to do a Christmas event this year, and then obviously a big one next pre-season, which will be, hopefully build on what we do this year.
Very good. Well, look, I'll endeavour to be there anyway. Hopefully Wes makes it too. But I think we just jump in and take some questions. There were a bunch given to us on Twitter. Is there anything I've missed? I don't think there is.
All good.
All good. Right, okay, straight in. FPL says, is the Everton defence worth a punt? And Wes, any designs, maybe desires on getting Trent with a similar team, so be interested in your stance on him. So the Everton question first. Is the Everton defence worth a punt? on our stream last week, someone was ranting and raving about Keane. I didn't take the plunge there. What do you think on Everton's defence? I don't know, Mark. Do you want to go for that?
Yeah, it's for me. It's only Dina because you just can't trust the clean sheets. And when you go Dina, you're paying that bit more, but you're paying for the chance. You're buying a ticket in the raffle for an assist or a goal. Well, not a goal, but certainly an assist. And I see, looking at the potential for the game week 35 double would be West Ham Villa. And around that, they've got Villa at home again, Sheffield United at home and Wolves at home. Now, they haven't been great at Goodison, but I kind of think I can see Everton ending the season well. They've still got an incentive. They've still got a European place to play for. And, they've got the new stadium coming. And I think even a Europa League spot will be something that they want, right? They'll want European football. I think Champions League is out of reach, but I would say Europa League certainly isn't for them. So I think that's important to me. When I'm picking my players at the end of the season, I want them to be in teams that have got incentive, that they're going to play full tilt. And Everton, I think, will. So even though they've not been strong at Goodison, I look at that wrapper around the potential double in 35 and think there's points there. There might only be one or two clean sheets, but with Dina, you've got that attacking potential. And I think they've got their injuries cleared up now as well. Rodriguez is back. Calvert-Lewin's fit. So they're at full strength as far as I can see. So I can see them ending strongly. So Dina, for me, is coming in, I think. Alonso's going to go ahead of 35 and Dina's probably the top target.
Oh, really? Have you got Castagna, Mark?
No.
So you prefer Dean's ahead of Castagna in your...
I do because of the 36 blank, right? Yeah. So that's the thing that's a factor there. I've got Inacho, right? So I don't want to take a second Leicester player at this point now. The time to get him was before last night, and I didn't make that move, which I just about got away with. But yeah, for me, I'd go Dino over Castagna because of that 36 fixture. Everton have got Sheffield United at home, and Leicester don't play. So yeah,
those fixtures are so good on paper, aren't they? I know, like you said earlier, they've struggled at Goodison, and they seem to have struggled against the lesser teams, haven't they? Like, just when they seem to be putting a good run together, they come up against one of these lesser teams, and just doesn't happen for whatever reason.
They have.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said.
And I think Calvert, one of the other things to look for with the close season is the Euros and players with a point to prove. And Calvert-Lewin wants to end the season strongly. He'll still fancy his chances of getting in the 11, right? It's remote, and I don't think he's got a chance, but he'll want to put himself in there. He'll want to give Southgate a problem. And the best way of doing that is scoring 5 or 6 goals. So I definitely think investment in Everton is worthwhile because the incentive is there for them to win matches, and their key players have incentive to impress as well. So that's my theory anyway.
Another just point on Everton before we move on is Sigurdsson. He's been bandied around a lot. He had obviously that 15-point haul. And he's getting game time, which he's been rotated all season, but he's played sort of 270 minutes over the last 3, even with James Rodriguez back in the team. 2.4% ownership at the moment, and a lot of people are kind of looking at him. Penalties, exactly. Like, I don't know, Wes, what do you think on Sigurdsson?
I don't know. Again, maybe this is me having negative bias towards him, like we was talking about earlier. Maybe I'm kind of sleeping on him, and obviously the fixtures are good, but... Yeah, no, there's something about Sigurdsson I don't really like. I do like the penalties. But for me, how much does he cost, John? At the minute?
6.9.
6.9. For me, there's better options out there.
I think he's very hard to fit in because, realistically, you're going to have 1 to 2 premium midfielders. And then outside that, there's Jota, Greenwood, Lingard, and there's definitely a few more. They're just the ones that are in my team around that price that people have. Yeah. So it's maybe hard to fit them, but I can completely understand why people are looking that way. Just sort of one... Yeah. I think General's looking at him as well. Just sort of one last ode to Gylfi.
Yeah, I think definitely I'm sleeping on him a little bit. Like you said, it's about squeezing him into your team. I wouldn't put anyone off getting Sigurdsson, and he has that potential with those fixtures. And... he's probably a better option than... I know a lot of people have gone for Maddison in recent weeks, but he's obviously finding his feet back from injury. He's had a couple of games... He's been subbed off early a couple of times. He hasn't quite looked himself. I guess he could come back to himself soon, but maybe he's a better option than someone like Maddison. But yeah, there's just a lot of midfielders. It depends on... Obviously, we've got a lot of questions on Jota that we'll get onto later, John. And I've got Jota at that similar sort of price range. And I'm not best pleased with him, but... Yeah, I can't imagine me squeezing Sigurdsson into my team, personally.
Mark, is there anything you want to add on Sigurdsson, or we move on?
No, I think you nailed it there. I think it's the midfield spots are so precious that any player getting into those five has got to be something special in terms of what he offers or his price. And Sigurdsson is neither. I don't think he offers quite enough assurance of points, and his price isn't quite cheap enough where you go, well, at that price I can take a risk. Because I mean, Rafinha as a player you haven't mentioned, and Leeds' running is incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And
Is he
he's
back fit?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think he's coming back. I think it's a dead leg. It's lingering a bit, but I mean, I wouldn't look to play him until maybe Brighton away this week. But it's Burnley, Southampton, West Brom for the final three, and I think that's where he. I'd rather have Rafinha, I think, than Sigurdsson for that run.
Yeah, Rafinha's an amazing player and also an amazing FPL asset. Like, he was creating so many chances. Haven't got the stats to hand, but before he got injured, he was very, very creative. And there was one game, was it Wolves away, where if their centre backs could just score goals, he'd have got like 10 assists.
Whereas I had him captain in that game, so I remember that very well. I think he created 4 big chances and 7 or 8 chances overall. It was torturous watching that match.
And to think he cried whenever he was told he was going to Leeds. He doesn't look like a player who was forced there. Do you know? He's playing amazing. He's trying to play his way out of the place, for God's sake. Rich has asked, Rich FPL, good friend of the show, are we at Hail Mary stage yet with 5 weeks to go? And if we are, who are your Hail Mary options for the run-in? So I think this is kind of relative to your position and your goals, as you've alluded to earlier, Mark. But I don't know. Wes, you can take this one first, Wes.
I will do, but I'll just jump in. I think there was a question. The guy who asked the previous question had a second part of the question about.
Oh, he did about you and Trent, wasn't it?
Trent, because he has a similar team. I'd like Trent. I thought about getting him last week. I didn't want to -4 him in and lose anyone else. My defence is sort of set up with my most expensive player being Luke Shaw. If I've got 2 free transfers this week, I might move on Bruno Fernandes, which I'm reluctant to do. But if I do that and free up some money, I could use my second free transfer to get Trent. However, is this the week to get Trent when they're playing Man United? Possibly not. But, if you're out there and you're thinking about buying Trent, I'd say any time's a good time to get Trent. It just depends on your situation and if you can finance him.
Yeah.
And the next question, sorry, back to the question.
It's just about Hail Mary.
Hail Mary. Yeah. So it's something that I rarely do any season because I'm in multiple mini leagues and I might be top in one, but then I'll be second in another. So I can't if you're just focusing on one mini league and you're top of it, you can kind of play sneaky and block the second place player and do stuff like that. But if you don't care about overall rank, but for me, I always just care about overall rank, and I never really play it safe for the sake of it. So say last week my captain was Iheanacho, the safe move was probably Salah, even though my rank was at the start of the week, what was it, 12k? I think so. Some people might play safe there, some people might attack it. I didn't do either, to be honest. I didn't do it to be this maverick to attack it. I just thought Iheanacho was the best option. However, I'd caveat that by saying if I was 300k, 200k or whatever, and I wanted to be inside the top 100k or whatever it might be, then I'd start taking calculated risks. So if you're choosing between player A and B for captaincy, maybe your head and all the stats and the eye test say player A is slightly better option, but player B might be less owned and less captained by players. So therefore, at that point, you can take a risk. A bit like I guess like Salah and Iheanacho this week. Iheanacho would be the slightly, in inverted commas, riskier pick, but he was still a great pick. So it wasn't a stupid move. You're not going ahead and making Harry Maguire your captain against Liverpool or something. I don't know why I picked Maguire, but you know what I mean. You're still making good decisions. You're not detrimenting your team, and you're just hoping that sort of luck's on your side and you can pull away.
Yeah. Mark, anything to add, and any Hail Mary picks for the last 5 weeks?
Yeah, I totally agree with Wes. I think the best route. I mean, I'm looking at the last 3 game weeks. I want to get the doubles out of the way, and the reason why I look at the last 3 game weeks is exactly what Wes said there with the captaincy. If you look at 36 and 37, for example, 36 Spurs have got Wolves at home, and in 37 they got Villa at home. Liverpool got West Brom away and Burnley away. So you've got to think the majority of managers, and in 37 United have got Fulham. So the top captaincies there will be Kane, Salah, maybe Fernandes. But in the same weeks, you could go Rafinha at Burnley and Southampton. You could go Lingard at Brighton and West Brom. You could go Nacho if you really wanted to, and the form is in as well. You could go Calvert-Lewin at Sheffield United Wolves at home. even
Lingard.
Yeah, even Zaha. Yeah. So I look at 30.
Zaha, yeah.
I look at 36 and 37. I think those are the 2 game weeks that I'm looking at. And you've got to think as well, the fans will be back. Well, we think the fans will be back 37 and 38. So that could throw everything out, couldn't it? I mean, form could go out the window. Who knows what impact having crowds back in is going to have. So the last 3 game weeks are the ones where I'm going to, if I need to push it, that's where I'm going to push it. And like Wes says, it will be with the captaincies. It won't be me bringing in radical players on transfers. It'll be me going, I'm going to pick the 4th or 5th most popular captain pick and hope they come in.
So just to pick your brain on that, Mark, before we move on. So for me, if I was ranked, you're 2.2k at the minute. If I was in that position, I wouldn't, like I say, I try not to think about rank when I play. However, in those last couple of game weeks, I'd probably be tempted to play safe because I'd be really happy with that rank. Top 2k would be, a good season. But obviously with your lofty ambitions to be top 1k, I guess you're in a position where, you don't see top 2k as a good rank almost. You see top 1k for your standards as a good rank, if that makes sense. So will you be playing it like you're playing catch up in a way?
Yeah, it depends where I am. Like if I'm 3k, I'll probably bank that and play safer. If I'm like just outside the top 1k, I'm 500. Yeah, then I'll push it, I think. Because I mean, as long as I own Salah and Kane and Fernandes, if I own those players, going with Lingard captain or going with Rafinha captain isn't that much of a risk. But there could be some gain. And again, it's marginal gains. It might only be 3 or 4 points. But actually, the difference between getting into top 1k and not could be 3 or 4 points. It comes down to that. It's crazy. Like I think we all probably did. I didn't take any hits this week deliberately. I basically knew that I was going to be conservative this week because my team looked strong for this coming week. It didn't look very strong for the one that's just gone. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to take any hits. So that's my first differential because I know a lot of people around me will. Yeah. And I'm not going to sell Kane for Vardy because, again, I think that Kane will be fit. And I turned out that was correct. And I'm going to hope that Dallas or Holding gets me a clean sheet. And one of them did. And that was enough. And in the end, I got a small green arrow, didn't take any hits. And that helped me. And I've got through that game week now. And now I'm into a stronger game week for me where I think I'm hopefully going to do better. So, sometimes it's just about recognizing that you can't push every week. It's about picking where you look like where you can make a difference. And when you look at 36 and 37, because of the captaincy picks, because Salah and Kane are going to be so popular, I think there's opportunities there to really make a difference.
Well, there we are. I think that answers the question. It's that that's when you could be pushing.
That was brilliant.
And again, I think back to that question of just like Hail Mary time, I think that's all relative to the team, who you are, what your aspirations are. If you're in a mini league and you've got one guy to beat, you need to judge that yourself based on the squads and whatever you've got in front of you. Quick question here from Ewan White. Thoughts on Ryan Mason as a manager now and whether this will impact negatively on Kane and Son as assets going forward? I thought this was interesting because obviously there's a lot of talk of Kane and Son and there's not a lot of confidence or love for Ryan Mason around the space. Do we think this, because I mean Mourinho, I think it was in the documentary they did, the All or Nothing, I think he kind of said to Harry Kane in one scene, he was saying like, I want to make you a global brand. I did it with Ronaldo, I've done it with this, I've done it with that, I want you to score 30-40 goals a season, whatever. And he was, Kane's been scoring. Does Ryan Mason change anything there, or do you think you just Harry Kane's Harry Kane, they've got Sheffield captain this week sort of job, or does it change your thinking? I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm very unsure on Spurs. I am probably going to do the Bruno to Son move. But the problem we've got with Ryan Mason is this is his first job, he's inexperienced. We don't know what a Ryan Mason team plays like. So we're kind of blinded, really, with that. Whereas, when a new manager comes in, we have an idea, right? This is the tactics they play. These are the players they're likely to kind of improve. This is what we're going to see in terms of clean sheets or not clean sheets. With Mason, it's guesswork at the moment. We haven't seen enough yet. My only feeling with Mason is my perception of him, he's a good guy who had a good career and he's a great servant to Spurs. And I'd like to think, as players who have Spurs in their hearts, Kane and Son will play for him and want to play for him and want to give him every opportunity to succeed. I think Kane and Son are both players who are conscientious and dedicated. They're professional. And because of that, I think I'm willing to go with it. But I've got concerns because it is an unknown. But I'm just on the basis that I think they're such credible characters, those two players, particularly Son, who's just, I just think he's so worthy in the way he acts, I think. And the emotion he's shown, I mean, that worries me a bit, the fact there's so much raw emotion on show from him. I wonder where he is mentally and whether there's an issue and whether he'll be taken out of the firing line if it goes on. But I hope that'll be turned around and he'll really play for Mason over the final stretch. So I'm willing to gamble on it on the basis that as characters, Kane and Son, I think, are strong.
Yeah. They've got no rotation risks there either in terms of those two are their best players, so they're going to play, and they're both players who play, who are happy to play 90 week in, week out, aren't they? And often do. And yeah, like you say, style of play is a bit of an unknown against for Mason. Southampton, they beat them 2-1, didn't they? Son scored a goal, which was then ruled out for quite an unlucky sort of offside, wasn't it? And then he dispatched a penalty. Like you said, cup final, will that have a dent on Spurs? I think in the short term, they've got Sheffield United at home this week. It's kind of a banker to play Son, and it's a banker to captain Kane, isn't it? If it goes wrong, it's like, well, you know, you've done everything right. I don't think you can start overthinking too much to move away from those players just because of Ryan Mason. If they look poor against Sheffield United for whatever reason, then we can start adjusting our thinking. But I think in the short term, we've got to play those guys, and I'll be captaining big Harry Kane.
Yeah, I had a look at the stats as well, and those two players, in terms of, we talk about the concept of a flat track bully, Kane has been the ultimate flat track bully this season. If you exclude the teams outside, if you exclude the big six, which obviously is very typical at the moment, I don't need to tell you who the big six are. They're the ones sulking in the corner. Yeah, against teams outside the big six, he's played 21 times and scored and got 28 goal involvements this season. And I think Son is fourth or fifth. It's a table I'm going to show in Black Box on Thursday, just to plug there. But basically, those two players are two of the strongest players against weaker opponents this season. And, you know, Sheffield United are the weakest opponent you can find. I mean, they're playing for pride now. They may rotate a bit. They may even play a few kids. We don't know what Sheffield United are going to turn up like. But I think we do know is that Spurs against weaker teams do well, and those two players do well.
Yeah. I think Mason wants to play a bit more possession-based game based on the fact that he started Winks a lot more than Mourinho has. I haven't got the stats in mind, but I'm pretty sure he started. Did he start the cup final? And I'm pretty sure he started the Southampton game as well. Again, it's very, it's a small amount of data, but the fact that Harry Winks was out in the cold under Mourinho, but he's been brought back in by Mason. I feel like he wants, whether he achieves that or not, I think he wants to get on the ball, which is what obviously Harry Winks can do. Harry Winks obviously lacks in other attributes where Mourinho maybe wanted a bit more defensively minded midfielder. I don't know, but yeah. So will that? I don't know. It's maybe a bit of a stretch to say they'll create more chances with Winks in the team, but like I said, I think for this one game we definitely trust them until they give us a reason not to.
Yeah, Lo Celso as well. Lo Celso's come back in from the cold a bit, hasn't he?
Yeah. He's a good ball player as well.
I was going to say, like, I could be managing them and you'd captain them against Sheffield. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think this week's out of the question.
Yeah, but John, would you let Harry do the team talk? Surely not.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Not after that documentary that he was talking about. He wasn't.
Come on, guys!
Put me off him. Honestly,
yeah.
When I watched that, it almost put me off getting him in my team. But
it rang true. It was like it was playing. I used to play Saturday League quite a lot, just my local area, and it was very. It was very like that.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It reminded me of, because I think the thing was at like underage football, they always just picked the best guy as the captain.
Yeah.
It's not the best leader, it's the best guy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it felt like. It kind of felt like this guy has to give a team talk and he just doesn't have it in the locker. He's an incredible footballer. But maybe you need someone like, I don't know. I don't know who in Spurs has it in them, but you need someone just screaming at them.
I think they do. I think that's the thing. I think they do actually lack leaders. I think maybe Højbjerg's a leader from looking at it, but he's maybe a bit too on the aggressive side. But yeah, I think Kane, I think they do lack that sort of, I think they do lack that leadership personally. I know it's kind of a cliche to say it, and we don't actually know for sure really by watching it. It's just a sense I get from Spurs.
Lee Carruthers cuts right to the heart of the matter this week and says, is it time to dump Bruno? And I mean, that's one of our big talking points. It's been kind of on people's lips for a few weeks. I think we discussed it a week or two ago, Wes. And at the time I was very much, it's Bruno. Go, get out of here. Just give it time. it's really been talked about this week. I think it's a place to free up funds for other players. It's a natural swap for Son, like you mentioned, Mark. There's a lot of reasons people could be getting rid of Bruno at the minute. Tough fixture.
There's a lot of good midfielders out there. There's maybe obviously this week you just blanked Greenwood, but Greenwood plays for Man United and had really good form up until last week. Obviously, I guess you can still class that as good form, but he's like what, 4 mil, 3.5 mil you could probably save on getting Greenwood, maybe 4 mil. And like with the expensive defenders coming back into it, like I said, I haven't got Trent in my team, so if I want Trent, I have to free up money from someone, and the only place I can do that is with Bruno. So I think my answer on this before, I'll just do a short one, then I'll let Mark jump in. But I think with Bruno, it's one of those where if you need the money and you can get another good option in there, like there are many good midfield options in there, and you need the money for Trent, then it's an option. And also, I'd like to add that, yeah, like you, John, a couple of weeks ago I'd have said, get out of here. Bruno is staying in my team till the end of the season. He's Mr. Consistent. However, he's not Mr. Consistent recently, and that sort of eye test thing that we said about with sort of Lingard and Iheanacho, I feel like when I am watching Man United, he's not as involved. He did still nearly score against Leeds with a shot just off target. He is still going to get... If I take him out, or if anyone takes him out, I think you can't expect him to blank every game to the end of the season. However, if you bring in a Greenwood, a Maddison, a Sigurdsson even, and they there or thereabouts match Bruno, but then you've spent the money on Trent, who really outscores your cheap defender or whatever, then it's obviously worth it.
There's a few factors for me in this as well. I mean, obviously there's the potential to blank in 36.
Yeah.
But also I watched that Leeds performance from United and it just worried me a bit. They've got this Europa League campaign. I think they've got the second spot sealed. I think they kind of know that they're not playing for anything in the league now. They're obviously not going to catch City, and I don't feel they feel under threat in second place. And so the league matches, I wonder about their incentive now. Liverpool is probably the one game that they don't need to be raised for. That should be a tumultuous encounter is what we'd expect. I'd be disappointed if it's not. But for the run-in, this Europa League, it's a trophy, right? And Solskjaer will want to win that. The players will want to win that. And I think that's what their eye is on now. And I think Bruno starts every game, but I just didn't see the intensity for United in that game against Leeds that made me think that they're going to win games 3-4-0. I don't think they are. I think they're going to score a couple of goals in some games, but Bruno hasn't been involved. Like you say, you visibly can see him not as involved. And also what I'll say about the Liverpool game is United against top 6 teams, and we mentioned the top 6 again.
0-0.
Then they're not strong. They've won the last 2, bizarrely. They've won at City and they've won at Spurs. So the last 2, they have turned it around. Before that, they scored 1 goal in 7 games against big 6 sides.
0-0 was the shot, wasn't it?
Yeah. And that 1 goal was, I think, a Bruno penalty. So you've got to think there's a possibility they play that Liverpool game with a lack of intensity, and it plays out another dire 0-0 or 1-0 encounter either way. And that's not what we want as a Bruno owner. We want 2 or 3 goals because we know then he's going to get a double-figure score, hopefully. But I don't think we're going to get that very often from United because I think the Europa League is suddenly their priority.
Yeah, and on that, I think... sorry, John, just before you jump in, just one quick thing. You said you think Bruno will start every game, and 9 times out of 10 I'd agree with that. But however, like you said, because of the Europa League, there is that... I don't want to scaremonger and say, Bruno's going to get rotated. However, I think there is a chance, because of how important that is and how not important the league is, and he's played so many games, that he will get just maybe one rest at some point in one of these Premier League games. So sorry, John, I just wanted to say that.
No, it's completely fair. One of the big things for me with Bruno is that, earlier in the season, he was just scoring so many double-digit goals that on any given week, he was an amazing captaincy option because you thought Bruno could get me 14 points, Bruno could get me 17 points, Bruno could get me 11 points. Whereas now, I feel like Bruno's there and I'm thinking, yeah, he might score a penalty. He might get me 8, 9, 10 points. He might, and that would be good. I'm not thinking, for me at the minute, I'm not thinking Bruno's going to go out and get a brace. I'm not thinking that. And maybe he could well go and do that this week, but I think for a player at that price, you want more. I want the captaincy option, and for me, Bruno isn't a captaincy option at the minute. So I think getting rid of him to free up cash to put it elsewhere, absolutely. I think, it's the end of the season, go and have some fun. I mean, he hasn't been performing over the last, I was just looking at his stats there, 16 goals, 13 assists this season. Over his last 5 games, is that 5 games, full 90-minute games, he's got 1 assist. Like, the form isn't there. United are playing for, as you say, a different tournament altogether. Yeah, if I would be all about. I have him. Unfortunately, I have bigger problems, I think. But definitely consider getting rid of him. Moving away from questions quickly, because there's a couple of points I think we really need to rattle out here, and we are tight enough on time. Diogo Jota, minutes could be managed a little bit more now. He didn't look great in their last game at all. I seen it, and he was in the right positions, doing the right things, but he just kept making a hames of it. The amount of times he seemed to give away possession, he just wasn't great. But it's amazing what 1 or 2 weeks can do to an FPL asset. Mark, what are your thoughts on Jota? Would you, if I don't know, do you have him? And if you do, if you don't, you do. Have you any thoughts of getting rid of him?
No, not at all. I think it's too early to be saying this. I mean, yes, he did miss chances, but at least he was getting chances. And I still look at Firmino and Mane and think they are further down the notches, or several notches down in terms of form than Jota anyway, right? So I think Klopp sees Jota as probably a bit of a catalyst for their attack. I think without him, they're even more flat. So I don't think they're in the kind of form, certainly not at Anfield, where they can consider resting Jota that much. I think he's too important already to them. I think, he'll probably only start 4 of the next 6, right? So he'll be on the bench a couple of times, but he's not expensive, or he isn't if you got him early enough. And as long as you've got a decent bench and you can try and read when he gets benched, I mean, he'll come on. That's the only thing. If you start him, you know he's going to come on and get minutes. So he could come on for a 1-pointer. But equally, with the fixtures Liverpool have got, Southampton, West Brom, Burnley and Palace after United, Jota in 10 minutes can get you something in any of those games. The problem is Liverpool aren't taking their chances. They're creating plenty, but they're not taking their chances. But to be honest, if I was putting my money on anyone to put a chance away at the moment, other than Salah, it would be Jota over Firmino and Mane. So I'm not getting rid yet. Maybe when I get to 35 and I can see the doubles and there's a decent option dangling in that price range, I'll reconsider. But I'm keeping him for United and benching him and then make up my mind.
I was just about to ask you that. Are you benching this week? Yeah, so I've got him in my squad, but I've still got a bloated good squad left over from our, the wild card followed by the bench boost in sort of 24, 25 time. So yeah, he's my bench player out of my front 8 this week. I'm
the same. I sort of set the team there earlier, and he's the guy for sub. So I'm in no rush.
He's scoring this week, then, isn't he?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. So yeah, it's one of those, because I see like everyone's talking about dumping him, but I like your kind of balanced thought on it there, Mark. It's really just 1 week. And as you say, like compared to some of the other forwards, one of my big regrets is not having Salah. I've probably went 90% of this season. I think I had him for the first 3 weeks and then I wild carded, and I haven't had him back, which is a bit crazy.
No, you did. You got him back at middle stage of the season, but again, you didn't keep him for very long. Maybe? No, it was a few weeks, but it was during one of his quiet spells. I don't think you even got the sort of benefit from him.
Typical.
Yeah. He's had a few of those, and that's the trouble.
He was one that he was in a similar sort of boat where I think he'd blanked at one stage of the season sort of 5 times in a row, and then I think this is right, and then I think he went and scored a brace away at West Ham. And then he blanked again, and then he blanked again for another 5 or something like that.
And do you remember that Palace game where Liverpool looked incredible and Salah came off the bench and got 2 worldies?
Yeah, and an assist or something. He's got like 17 points off bench.
And I was like, right, pile on Liverpool, and then it was just disastrous from then on for Salah and Liverpool. I don't know what they've been so strange this year.
Yeah, that's when we thought, like you say, that's absolute demolition of Crystal Palace. All their forwards looked good, and then I can't remember how many goals as a team they got after that, but yes, Salah certainly blanked for a fair few after that. It was like you said, it was crazy. Nothing made sense, did it? Like after 7-0,
no,
these players, that's form.
We're talking about the eye test now. You can make a call based on that. Off the back of that, I was like, I'm full on Liverpool, and
triple attack.
Just went wrong. Yeah, it just went wrong.
It did. Like I'm looking at the matches after that, like the 5 matches after that. A lot of them they didn't score, or they scored 1 goal, like mad.
Against like poor teams as well. They kept like I said, Everton has struggled at home against poor teams. Liverpool definitely have. I think there was a stat on Sky Sports they put up the other day against the bottom 6 teams at home. They beat Sheffield United early doors, and then since then it has been either like 0-0s or 1-0 losses against the sort of bottom 6. This was before the Newcastle game, I think. But it just goes to show, that they've struggled to break down that low block. They've been defending deep and haven't had that creativity. This was back when sort of Trent and Robbo weren't creating as much as they usually were. Obviously, Mane and Firmino's form would definitely dip. So, yeah, they were just really struggling.
We'll move on to the other player I wanted to discuss, and it's the team in general, but one player to start it. It's Jamie Vardy. A lot of people are talking about leaving Vardy and going either downgrading Iheanacho if they picked the wrong one, or maybe just pivoting and going to Kane altogether. Wes, what are your thoughts on Jamie Vardy at the minute? It's a bit heartbreaking. Like, I had him captain there. You were lucky and not lucky. You were very smart and captain Iheanacho was mate.
And handsome.
Yeah, and handsome, that's it. But there was a chance he had that Iheanacho put him through for, and I was like, here we go, and then nah.
Yeah. And he scored one it was quite comfortably offside, wasn't it? But he did put that away, and it is one of those where if the shoe was on the other foot, obviously you had Vardy and Iheanacho, didn't you, John? But you had Vardy captain. If I would have picked Vardy and didn't have Iheanacho, I'd have been watching that game, and we don't blame luck, do we, John? We've always said that throughout the season. We don't use that sort of luck stuff at all. But I would have felt hard done by for sure in terms of the chances he had right early on in the game as well. He had a chance where he sort of rounded the keeper, but then the keeper did well and sort of shepherded him out. So that was a chance as well. I don't think he even got a shot away at that one, but yeah, it was a tough one. So what would I do with Vardy if I had him? It is team dependent, isn't it? Would I use a transfer and go Vardy to Iheanacho? Knowing my style of play, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably sort of think I've made my bed, I'm going to lay in it. Sometimes you have to ride out these sort of mistakes, and Vardy. Let's not forget. I'm pretty sure it was last week, wasn't it, where Vardy got a 10-pointer and Iheanacho only a 6-pointer. I know there's a big price difference there, and I do prefer Iheanacho as an option. But once you've made your bed, sometimes you do have to lay in it, don't you? And I know people last week did the whole. Sorry, John. Just one last point on that. Some people last week did Kane was blanking, so they did Kane to Vardy with the idea of jumping back. I never liked that because it was using up 2 transfers, which inevitably means something else goes wrong in your squad, which means you take a -4 elsewhere, and you probably lose value on Kane as well. But yeah, what would I do? I think if I didn't have Kane this week, Leicester have got Southampton, haven't they? So I'd hold him. I think Leicester last season.
Would you hold him and not have Kane, Wes? Surely not.
I don't. I'm getting. This is so emotionally hard for me to answer. I don't even have Vardy, but
I think a lot of it depends on team value, how many transfers you're making. If you're going to be going from Vardy to Kane, geez, that's a discussion. If you're going from Vardy to Iheanacho, it depends where you're spending that cash this week.
You've got Vardy in.
I have the three of them
on the bench. Oh, okay.
This is my week, Wes. Here we go.
Yeah. That's a very good strike force for this week. If you didn't have Kane and you could afford to do it in one move for these 2 fixtures, I'd say you've kind of got to. However, Vardy does also have a good fixture, doesn't he? So, is it suicide not
this
going
is breaking
Kane this week? It is.
It is. It's really. Yeah.
I'm so glad I haven't got this dilemma because I wouldn't be able to make a decision.
Answer it for us, Mark. What would you do?
Yeah, answer it like.
I like Vardy's a great player to have, right? But now it's different because he's playing alongside a striker who's scoring goals. And 2 things there. One, is it getting to him? And I actually think it is. I see signs on the pitch, the way Vardy's playing, that he's almost trying too hard and snatching at chances. He's never had anyone else in the team, whether it be a forward or a midfielder, sharing the goals with him and actually taking the majority of the goals off him, which is what Iheanacho's doing. And I think there's a reaction to that. I don't think Vardy is composing himself like he used to. I think he's snatching at chances. I think it's getting to him that he's not getting the goals that Iheanacho is getting. And secondly, you've got to think that if Iheanacho is scoring every game, are Leicester going to win every game 2 or 3-0? I know they did in that previous game where Vardy outscored him, but they weren't good against Palace. They were pretty poor for long periods. If you think you've got Iheanacho and Vardy, to get returns from both of them, they've either got to assist each other or they've got to score 2 goals. And I don't know if they are going to score 2 goals in every game for the rest of the season. Plus, they got the blank in 36. So if you haven't got Kane, Vardy to Kane is a must. I think that's a pretty easy move.
But
and
what about the Leicester double though in 35?
yeah, well, the Leicester double, if it's confirmed, I mean, definitely would hold. I would, if you've got Kane, Vardy, and Iheanacho, you hold it for this game and see what happens with the double. But if you haven't got Kane, I think it's. I don't want to mention effective ownership, but it's going to be big on Kane, I think, and I think it's a risk not going in with Kane. And I think if you've got Iheanacho, you may have the Leicester goals covered at Southampton, and certainly that's been the case of late. Other than that game, who did they beat 3-0? I've forgotten now.
I know the game you mean.
Yeah, where Vardy outscored him.
Evans I think Vardy was quite lucky with the bonus that game.
West Brom, that's right. Yeah. I actually tipped West Brom to win that. That's why I've forgotten it. So yeah, I think with Iheanacho scoring, it's a very different situation because we're used to getting Vardy in our teams when he is the principal goal scorer for Leicester. He's not at the moment.
His role
that changes things, doesn't it?
His role's definitely changed because, like you say, Leicester have played with one striker for the last 2 or 3 years, and he has been that number 9. It's been built around him. It's been feeding Jamie Vardy chances to score goals. Now, like in that Sheffield United game, Vardy got 3 assists. He hasn't got 3 assists in the game for a while, but he got them all for Iheanacho, I think, or the majority of them.
Yeah.
So his role's definitely changed. He did get a few chances last week, but I agree with you in terms of his coolness of his finishings. Maybe let him down in the last game. I know he scored well against West Brom, and it's an interesting point you make about Vardy being maybe mentally not happy with someone else taking the limelight. Because if you watch the goal back of Iheanacho scoring, normally Vardy would celebrate with a teammate when he is the sort of mate, but he sort of booted the ball back into the net and looked maybe a bit angry again. I could be it's very easy to misread these situations in his head. Yeah. Maybe Vardy was ecstatic for Iheanacho, maybe he was, but yeah, it was interesting when you said that because it did make me think that's that celebration, and there is maybe something there.
Yeah, I don't think it's resentment of Iheanacho. I think it's frustration at his own fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything nasty from Vardy. It's just like, okay, it's not coming off for me, and yet this guy's turning and shooting from 25 yards going top corner. It's just not happening for him as he would want it. And I think that's beginning to build up in him. West Ham, he was dreadful in that game. Absolutely dreadful. He was a passenger for most of the game. And also, like you say about Vardy, he was previously a wide forward. He is more natural running the channels than Iheanacho is. So if one of them's going to pull out wide and run the channels, it will be Vardy. And so that's happening as well. So I've got Calvert-Lewin, Vardy and Kane, and I think that I'm happy with that. I think Vardy could outscore Calvert-Lewin this week, but I like Calvert-Lewin going forward as a differential.
That could be really good with that fixture that we spoke about with Everton. One more player just to quickly throw at you, Mark, before John carries on with the sort of topics. It just came into my head now. Pereira. I've seen loads of stuff this week about Pereira in this calendar. I think it's in this calendar year in 2021. He's right up there in terms of overall FPL points. Yeah. Can't remember if he was first.
He's second, I think. I think he's second, yeah.
And obviously he played against Aston Villa. He was probably the best player on the pitch, and he's dispatched his penalty really well. So therefore, he's obviously on penalties. West Brom are still fighting, and they have to win. They can't go and play for a 0-0 draw somewhere. They have to win, don't they? So they have to score. And he's a decent. I think he's sort of 5.5-ish maybe. So again, he's not a player that I'm saying to people, go and get him in your team. But he's definitely an option now, and he's one I've slept on him all season. I'll be honest. I've always kind of just thought I don't want to. My thought on him has always been he's a good player, but I don't want a West Brom player in my team. And for large portions of the season, it's probably been right to ignore him. But he's on a bit of a purple patch now, anyway.
Yeah, and AZ, or as he likes to be called,
Big AZ.
Yeah, he got Pereira in game week 1. He was absolutely building him up from game week 1, and he got him in. He held him for a couple of weeks. He got the goal at Everton, and in the end, he conceded that West Brom just weren't going to score a goal. Because I was always like, well, he is their main man, but where's the goals coming from? And he was supplying to nobody, and obviously, Big Sam's come in and it's transformed. I think he's shifted his role a bit to make him more central. And he's just been outstanding. Yeah, it's crazy. I think I did, when I was looking back at Bruno's points, going back to, I think, game week 18, it was just to prove how Bruno declined, but he was still in the top 10. And I was like, I saw Pereira near, I was like, is that right? I had to check the stats. I just couldn't believe how much Pereira was right up there with the top scorers since over the last 15 game weeks, I think it is. It's again, though, it's those midfield slots. It's really hard to, who do you get rid of? Jota, I guess, but they haven't got a double, have they? So you're getting him in as a single game week player. So if you're not getting him in for this game against Wolves, then once you get to 35, you're going to be blinded by double game week players. So you're probably not going to get him in then. I guess it's 36, 37, but the trouble is, are West Brom still alive at that point?
Yeah.
If they
exactly.
are, I think he is a good bet, yeah.
One last Leicester player. We'll discuss captaincy, which will be pretty brief. And we'll maybe leave 35, 36 discussion until next week, Wes. But Castagna is getting a lot of traction. He's been talked about a lot on Twitter. I'm kind of gutted. Do you know, the last 2 weeks I've made howlers. I think I went Trent and Vardy whenever I should have went Iheanacho. No, I went Phillips and Vardy over Trent and Iheanacho. And then something else happened. And then this week I brought in, I forget who I bloody brought in, doesn't even matter, but I didn't get Castagna in. Do you know, I've just had a couple of howlers of weeks. I think I went like Dunk and Greenwood instead of Castagna and someone cheaper or something that I was looking at. Anyway,
Dunk should have got you returns, to be fair.
I've had a couple of howlers, but yeah, I was kind of devastated. I was watching the game, and whenever Iheanacho laid it back, I was like, yes! And then I seen him go in, and I was like, no! And yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Castagna, Mark, in terms of, you know, obviously you mentioned Lucadinha earlier in reference sort of this topic. Trent's there. Yeah, talk to me.
Yeah, I was very close to going Alonso to Castagna for a hit, but I kind of talked myself out of it. I thought, no, let Dallas and Holding come on and hope one of them gets a clean sheet. And in the end, Dallas did get an unlikely clean sheet, which meant that I went into that game and Castagna had to get 10 points for me to be down on that, because obviously there's the hit. And then Dallas got the clean sheet. Yeah, so he got a total of 10 points. So it would have been 10 points. So I was thinking, well, for Castagna to get more than that, he's going to have to score and get a clean sheet. So when they conceded early, I was like, job done. It was the right call. And then he scored. I'm like, oh, geez, this is not good. And yeah, I mean, he's been a force when moved back to the right-hand side. And it's quite interesting. We thought, I kind of thought, and certainly as did, that Pereira would get that slot and Castagna would stay left. But Rodgers has brought Thomas in left to give Castagna the right-hand berth. And since he's done that, he's been outstanding. And he looks like he did early season when Pereira was out. And so I think the week to get him was the week that's just gone. I don't know if I get in now, because I do think Dina, with the game in 36, which I think is what's going to happen, is slightly better. You know, I don't really trust that Leicester defence either. I think Dina and Castagna are very similar. You've got to have attacking returns to justify them, because I don't think you can trust them defensively. Leicester always show up good numbers, but never seem to be consistent with clean sheets. So I think the chance has gone for him. I prefer Dina, but there's certainly merits in going back in for him. It depends really if that blank materialises in 36.
I'm going to just send listeners back to probably, to be fair, it's a bit of a shit call because I called it way too early. But with 2 games back from injury, I said, watch him. Everyone will be talking about him in a few weeks. It took more than a few weeks, but here we are. I'm going to point you back at that. So, yeah, captaincy, I mean, I don't think we'll be taking too long on this. For me, it's Harry Kane. I'm just checking. Yeah, it's Harry Kane. And the vice would normally be on Son, but just because of unsure times and all, in case something happens to Spurs game, I have the vice on Iheanacho. What about you, lads?
Yeah, similar. I've got no doubt I'm putting it on Kane. It is interesting though, isn't it? Because of how good Iheanacho's form is, and you could also argue how good, you know, Lingard's form is and some other players. However, yeah, it's Kane. He's got season-long form. It's at home to Sheffield United. It's just a banker cap. It's an easy choice. I like easy captaincy choices, and I think this week is just one of those. Put it on Kane, and what will be. Will he be your top point scorer in your whole team? You know, it's FPL, maybe not. Maybe you get a random big score from someone else, but it's too hard to call that on the head. So yeah, just Kane for me.
Yeah, it will be for me. I'll go back to that stat I mentioned earlier. 21 games against sides outside the top 6, 28 goal involvements. So the date, and that's the best of any player, right? So he's the top player against teams outside the top 6 this season. So that the data points to it, and that justifies it. I think you're right. He probably won't be our top point scorer. I think he returns something though, and that sometimes that's what you want. You want to go, I want security. I want security that I'm not going to get 2 points, and that's why we go with Salah, Fernandes, or Kane, because those are the players most likely to offer that. I mean, the argument is you go with the player who you think is going to score the most points. Well, yeah, not always, because within Nacho it could be 2 points or 12, couldn't it? Right. So I think I will play safe with Kane because, like I said earlier, there are game weeks to come where I think I can push it. And also, I go into this game week with Alonso and Calvert-Lewin, who could be differentials. So I've got enough elsewhere where I don't have to push it with the captaincy.
And Spurs have something to play for, which you've already referenced. They really do have European football to be playing for. So
yeah,
you'd expect them to want to really put one over on Sheffield, bounce back from the cup defeat and everything else. We saw the emotion on the pitch, but lads, I'm happy enough in terms of what we've covered. There were a couple of other little points, but based on time, was there anything else you really wanted to ask Mark?
No, I don't think. Thank you, Mark, for coming on. Absolute, obviously, legend in everyone knows him in the fantasy football community world. Absolute legend for what he's done. I think I said to Mark in the DMs when I asked him on that he's been one of the inspirations, along with another Mark, FPL General, along with Will from Fantasy Football Hub. A couple of others who have made it their full-time job. Because to be honest, I know obviously people listening probably know that that's what I've managed to do. But it didn't seem, maybe I wouldn't have thought it would have been possible without, trailblazers like the people I've just mentioned. So, yeah, absolute legend. And thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks, Wes. Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasure. I just love doing different pods and getting involved with the content creators that are out there. I'm trying to do as many as possible. And as you've no doubt know and have heard, that I just love talking about the game. So it's a pleasure to be on and chatting with like-minded people like yourselves.
Good stuff. Sure, we'll see you next week then.
One last thing for Mark. Actually, I've got a bone to pick with you, Mark. So
go on.
When me and John stream for Fantasy Football Hub, we're not actually doing it this week for anyone listening, just so you know, because John's got some family commitments and whatever else. So we're not streaming this week. We'll probably be back for the following week. However, we often stream sort of Thursday evening, sometimes 8 p.m, sometimes 9 p.m. Black Box is sometimes on at the same time, stealing our viewers.
Sorry, guys. I do want to move to Wednesday because Champman goes Thursday as well. It's like we're the bad boys by taking that slot. I do want to move. It's just the work circumstances means I can't do it Wednesday. Wednesday will be our day next season. I can absolutely promise you. So don't move to Wednesday because then that'll be.
We're pretty fluid. We move around. We just kind of see what suits us. But no, it's funny because whenever the first week or two we're like, oh my god, there's 500-600 people here. This is amazing. The next week it's 103 people, and you're like, what is happening? And I clicked on YouTube, and it was like, oh, that's what's happening.
1.1k over there.
Yeah, but no, look, outstanding. Mark, do you want to give yourself a big plug? We've already kind of plugged a few things, but really just be the most self-indulgent man in the world for the next minute.
No, I mean, honestly, all I can say is, if you haven't seen Black Box yet, join us for a show sometime soon. We're live every Thursday, the same slot as these guys. No, only joking. It's, we're Thursday 9:00 for a while until things change. So come and watch Mr. AZ and me do FBL Black Box, and also follow Fantasy Football Fest FF_Fest, because we're going to be releasing news of our first event. It is going to be a public event, so it's first come first serve on the tickets. And I'm just looking forward to meeting everyone there and having a good night. And we deserve it, I think. After it's been a rough year for everybody, and the community, I think, has been very strong throughout this period. So much going on, so many people creating good content, and I think we deserve to pat ourselves on the back, and hopefully we'll do that evening.
Has COVID led to loads of people having loads of free time and making content? Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Are there loads more podcasts now? I suppose there are.
I get that impression, yeah. I mean, there's generally more pods going on about everything. And so I just think anyone who loves FBL is on, well, let's do something. And hopefully everyone makes it through this period and carries on doing it. It's hard, right, to get content off the ground from scratch. It takes a long time. When I launched Scout, I remember coming to work and going, I've got 100 visitors this week. It took me a year and a half to get anywhere near credible traffic. But I kept it going just out the love of it. And that's what if you love it, you'll keep it going. So that's what it's about.
Exactly. I found that with content as well and doing this. And all back to your point, John, about the sort of COVID thing. For me, I was working a job, an office job, fairly well paid and all that, but away from the kids and stuff. And that was just normal life. And then all of a sudden I was furloughed at that sort of period for 3 months. And just loved being at home, being around the kids, doing stuff with them. So then the opportunity to move, I then went back to work, and I was just like, nah, this isn't for me. I've got a small chance of making this working in the fantasy football world. Let's go for it. And luckily it's worked out. So I took a bit of a gamble, but I'm glad I did. And for the love of of doing fantasy football stuff and for the home life as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Long live FPL. Well,
Yeah.
look, Mark, genuine, it was a pleasure. Lovely to meet you. And look, hopefully down the line we can chat to you again. And if not too soon, we'll see you for a pint at some stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come on pre-season if you're having me. We'll do a bit then. So pleasure, guys.
Brilliant.
Thanks for having me on.
Great.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.